I've been called to this house in the middle of nowhere on Dartmoor National Park. Someone's dead inside, and it's up to me to find out who did it. The victim was found by his wife just after 6 a.m. this morning. She had got up to go to the toilet, and then she found him slumped over his desk, still breathing but barely conscious. He was taken to hospital where he died a few hours later. The man is Edward Feathers, the managing director of a multi-million-dollar tech company based here in the Southwest. From what I can see, there's no sign of forced entry. His car is parked outside, and the gates are locked from the inside. And just before I walk through those doors, I need to ask myself, why would someone kill Edward Feathers? Welcome back to another episode. Today we have a special treat. I'm now recording these remotely so that I can take them with me when I travel. Which means today's video was recorded on location at a friend's house in Devon. Big thank you to her for letting me use her property as a filming location. Now, let's get into the video. I don't know about you, but one of the things that would put me off living in an isolated house in the middle of nowhere is the fact that if something like this happened, I wouldn't be able to get mobile signal. But it seems Mrs. Feathers isn't fazed by the lack of service, because she's on the phone right now telling me all about her husband's death. Her name is Miranda, and she's adamant that Edward was not the kind of person who would make enemies. He was a successful businessman, sure, but he wasn't greedy or dishonest. So the thought of anyone wanting him dead is unfathomable to her. She tells me they were alone at the house last night. Their 2 children had flown back to America to visit their father on his deathbed. They had hoped to join them soon, but now, of course, that won't be happening. She takes me through to the office where Edward was found. It's a large room with glass walls overlooking the garden and a small bathroom attached. There's a TV, some comfy chairs, and a large wooden desk in the middle of the room. And it's covered with post-it notes, papers, and files. One of them has a number written on it, 73. Another one has 42 on it, and next to it a red Sharpie. That number seems to come up a lot. There are framed family photos on the desk, a recent one of Edward with their 2 children, and one of them as babies. It seems inconceivable that someone could do such a thing. A cold case that's been opened up again. The officer who's been in charge of the cold cases at the station since I started working there has finally retired. I worked closely with him on several cases, including this one. This was his final case. So I think he wanted to tie everything up neatly in a bow before he left. It's believed that Emily Carter was killed by a disgruntled client of her husband's financial firm. The problem is there are hundreds of clients and none of them had any motive. But the retired officer was convinced there was more to this case than met the eye. He had an almost sixth sense when it came to these things. He spent months poring over the evidence, eventually finding this, a number scrunched up in an envelope hidden behind the filing cabinet. It wasn't significant at the time and was overlooked during the initial investigation, but the officer knew it was important. Once deciphered, the number led him to this, a grainy CCTV image of a van parked outside the Feathers house. He managed to trace the van back to its owner, a man by the name of Ronald Flack, a known drug dealer. Why would a drug dealer be visiting the Feathers? The retired officer believed that the couple were involved in something bigger than just money. Feathers was questioned by the police, but without any solid evidence, he was released without charge. The retired officer never gave up on this case and continued to correspond with Feathers even after his release. But after 3 years, Feathers stopped replying to his letters. A year later, the officer received a letter from the United States addressed to his dead wife. In it, Feathers told how he and his wife had gone to America to start anew lives, leaving the painful memories of Dartmoor behind them. He didn't mention anything about his business dealings or the reason they had to flee. And the only other thing that turned up in the post was this doll. I can't see nor feel anything in the post. Then I noticed something else. Each of the numbers on the post-it notes on the desk adds up to 7. 7 plus 3 equals 10, 4 plus 2 equals 6. I ripped the post-it note with the number 73 on it and put the pieces together. Nothing. Okay, maybe that's not significant. But what about the phone call I had yesterday from a private number? The caller knew my name and address and told me to watch the news at 6 p.m. They then hung up. It couldn't have been a wrong number because I live at this address. I know it's not significant, but the timing of it all feels a bit weird. The phone call and this doll turn up at exactly the same time. I look closer at the doll and see a message scrunched up inside. It says, "Call the police," and then underneath, in much smaller writing, "They'll never listen." Of course, they're referring to the police not taking the case further, But why are they telling me to call the police? Who is this person? What do they want? What do they know? I need to know what Edward was up to. I go through his desk looking for clues and find an envelope addressed to him from a lawyer. Out. Inside is a document outlining the sale of shares in the Feathers Company. Edward has sold most of his shares in the company and transferred them to an offshore account in the British Virgin Islands. This doesn't explain the cryptic messages, but it does confirm my suspicions that Edward has been lying to the police about how much money he has. If he has something to hide, why sell all his shares in the company and transfer the money abroad? Is he in debt? Was that why he was murdered? Miranda enters the office just as I'm putting the documents away. She looks distraught and tells me she's found something in the bathroom. She takes me through to the small bathroom attached to the office and shows me what she found. This number, 72. I pull my torch out and shine it on the floor. Next to the number, there are tiny little specks of what looks like blood. It must have been there all along, but it wasn't visible to the naked eye until now. I take a photograph and send it to the lab for analysis. Whoever killed Edward knew this place well. They were clearly familiar with the layout and were trying to communicate with me, but why? I don't understand. I've uncovered nothing significant in the 3 years since Edward Feathers died. But now I've got messages left for me in the bathroom, on the desk, on the doll, and in the post. Why? The results have just come back from the lab. The substance on the floor is indeed blood, and it matches Mr. Feathers. So whoever was responsible for his death was already injured when they killed him, but that doesn't help us much. I examine the walls of the bathroom for CCTV cameras, but there aren't any. And just as I'm about to give up hope, I notice something. A tiny hole just above the number 72. It's covered by a false one-way mirror. As I make my way downstairs, I pass the lounge and hear a noise. I stop and listen. Then I push the door open and step inside. There's a ladder leaning against the wall, and on top of it is a camera and a screen. Whoever was watching me is also watching the playback on this monitor. I jump onto the sofa and reach for the screen. I grab hold of it, but it's too late. The person has already seen me. I look up and see a man standing in the doorway. He's wearing a black hoodie and a black mask. He drops the gun. He was holding onto the floor and makes a run for it. I chase after him, but he's too quick for me. He runs through the front door and out into the garden. I follow, making my way through the long grass. I can hear him crashing through the undergrowth ahead of me. I can't see him, but I can hear him. Then suddenly he stops. I'm gaining on him now, and I can hear him talking. He's on the phone. He asks the person on the other end to wait, that he needs to sort something out, and that he'll be there as soon as he can. Then he hangs up and starts running again. Runs across a field, jumps over a stone wall, and disappears into the trees. I reach the wall and climb over. Scan the area for him, but there is no sign of the man anywhere. I make my way back to the house. Miranda is sitting on the sofa in the kitchen, and she turns to me and asks if I found him. I shake my head. She tells me she saw him. He'd come into the kitchen and asked for a glass of water. She had recognized him from a photo used in a national newspaper, the Daily Fail. That's why she knew who he was, because his face was all over the news. We both stand in silence for a moment, thinking about what to do next. The killer is out there somewhere, and I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of him. Why me? Why am I being targeted? What do I know that they don't want me to know? I search the house again, looking for answers. In the bedroom, I find a box of old photographs. As I go through them, I realize I know that man. It was the reporter from the Daily Fail. He was the one who broke the story about the missing shares. So it all makes sense now. Feathers tried to cover up his tracks by selling the shares and hiding the money. He didn't want the press to know what he was up to. And who better to cover up his crime than the very newspaper that published the story? I think I know who the buyer was too. I go through to the lounge and pick up the laptop. On the screen is a video showing the interview the reporter did with Feathers. It was never published, but it was enough for me to uncover the truth. Feathers was laundering money for a dangerous criminal, and the reporter was in on it. The numbers were left for me to decipher, to lead me to the truth. I know who I need to speak to next. The only question is, will he tell the truth this time? Or is he just protecting his friend?